Hey, Eagle fans! Your Statesboro Walmart is your one-stop shop for all your Georgia Southern football and game day needs. Pick up your GSU sports gear here. We have t-shirts, hats, tote bags, koozies, stadium bleacher seats, car spirit flags, wall pennants, beads, and more right here at the best prices in town. Also, don't forget we can handle all of your tailgating needs with our great food trays, baked goods, and fresh, high-quality meat, seafood, and chicken.
Walmart. Save money. Live better. Walmart.
On this week's show, Georgia Southern caps a magical season by winning the Sun Belt Conference and going undefeated in league play in the process. We'll have a season in review and much more coming up as we welcome you inside the Eagles' Nest. And welcome inside the Eagles' Nest. I'm your host, Josh Aubrey, being joined as always by Matt Yogus, sports editor and Georgia Southern beat writer for the Statesboro Herald. And Matt, before we kind of review how the season went for the Georgia Southern Eagles, let's get to the point that everybody seems to be talking about right now, and that is the denial of Georgia Southern's appeal to try to make it to a bowl game. My thoughts quickly and first of all are, yes, it's very difficult. It's very frustrating. You had a great year. You're 8-0. Do you deserve it? Of course. But you knew 2 years ago when you were joining the FBS that you were not going to be eligible this year regardless. So while it is frustrating and you want to scream, you kind of knew going in that this was going to happen, and it has happened. Hopefully this will change in the future. Georgia Southern makes a great case that this is a stupid rule that should be changed, and maybe somebody else will benefit down the road.
Yeah, you got the Marshall rule. Maybe you'll have the Georgia Southern rule too going down the road. But if you really take the 30,000-foot view of this situation, I think everybody made the right move. The NCAA made the right decision by sticking with the rules. You know, Georgia Southern made the right decision by trying to get a waiver. Obviously, they were unsuccessful. I think we kind of expected that. And everybody politically said the right things. Georgia Southern's left out of a bowl game. It's unfortunate. But at the same time, you know, you mentioned it, you know, in the green room before we started shooting, that they knew going in they weren't going to get it. So, yeah, you had a great season. Celebrate. You're 8-0 in the Sun Belt. You've never lost a Sun Belt game, and you're the Sun Belt champion. So, you know what? Celebrate that and go do it again next year. Maybe you go 12-0 and get that Access Bowl.
Well, it would be a little ironic if somebody like James Madison, who they've been trying to get to join the Sun Belt, were to be able to be a beneficiary of a rule that might allow a team moving up. I think that this rule seems a little antiquated at this time, and I think the NCAA should look at it in the off season and say, hey, let's change this rule, because while it won't affect Georgia Southern, it is a stupid rule. But, you know, if you had a nickel for every stupid NCAA rule, we'd be pretty rich right now.
Yeah, you're telling me. And again, it was the right decision because that's what the rule states. Not that it's a rule that makes a whole lot of sense, especially these days. You know, I think in 2002 there were at least 12 or 13 fewer bowls at the time. It was a much different situation, and you're right, it is antiquated. So not defending the rule here, just defending the decision because it was the decision that had to be made.
Well, Matt, let's look back on the season in review. You start off the year at NC State. You go down to the wire. It looked like a game you were going to win, and everyone, I think, including us, were very shocked by how the Eagles played. Then you come back home, play Savannah State, blow them out as we expected, go to Georgia Tech, and for a half, we were kind of like, oh no. Is this the season it's going to be? Then you bounce back. It's hard to say that maybe part of the turning point of this season was a loss at Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great effort in the second half. I think you're right. When they were down 35-10, a lot of people were thinking, oh boy, kind of eye-rolling going on. But Georgia Southern.
I'll raise my hand.
Me too. But Georgia Southern, you know, they're a team that doesn't give up easily. You know, you can look further down the road at the Navy game. But, you know, it's a team that's going to give a lot of effort. At the time, they were completely healthy. And, you know, you talk about that NC State game, so many good signals came up. I think everybody left that game impressed with everything except the final score. the way Coach Fritz handled himself on the sideline, the way the team was prepared to play the game, the way some of the question marks were answered on the defensive line in the secondary, and especially on offense, where Georgia Southern really just blew everyone out of the water with the rushing game, led the nation with 385 yards a game, really spectacular. And then you said it, the Savannah State game, 83 points, more than anybody thought they were going to get. I picked them to lose the game, apparently, I'm told. And then, Georgia Tech, they showed how dynamic they were offensively with the way they came back through the area and on the ground.
All right, then the Sun Belt play begins on the road at South Alabama, a team that was predicted to be in the top echelon, I guess, of the Sun Belt Conference, and they go down there and they take care of business, play probably one of their best defensive games of the season, get enough done on offense to pull out the victory, and then from there, they go through the Sun Belt with some ups and downs, but nonetheless, undefeated in the league. Your thoughts on how the Sun Belt play worked out for Georgia Southern?
Well, after that Georgia Tech game, I remember thinking, Georgia Southern might be favored in every game they play from here on down the road. And they showed why at South Alabama. It was 28-6 was the final score. Obviously, defense holding anybody to 6 points is a good game. Savannah State got more than that. So, very impressive defensively. But the thing I left most impressed by was the fact that they were terrible in the second half offensively. Turnovers all over the place, bad decisions, just not a great game of execution in the final 30 minutes of that game, and Georgia Southern won going away. So, you got to be thinking, South Alabama's the third best team in the Sun Belt. Georgia Southern's going to be in pretty good shape. And then the points kept piling up, just blowout after blowout, a little struggle at New Mexico State, and then back when they went to the, far away to another time zone again at Texas State. But they did enough to win, and I think there's no doubt they were the better team in both of those games. Anytime you need 2 onside kicks just to win the game, as Texas State did, it's fair to say the other team was better. And then a really dramatic kind of held together with scotch tape and bubble gum win against UL Monroe to cap the perfect season off.
Of course, prior to the UL Monroe game was the Navy game, which a bit of a debacle in that one. Despite playing a pretty competitive first half, the second half, I think everybody kind of liked to forget about. But to be able to bounce back from that with some injuries, and that's the thing that Georgia Southern stayed pretty healthy, relatively speaking, compared to what they've been in the past few years. But I guess one of the big question marks is going to be the health of Kevin Ellison going on into the future. It seems like he tends to take hits, maybe more so than he needs to. And for Georgia Southern to be successful, you're going to have some consistency with that quarterback situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Ellison's just a tough guy. You can't fault him for playing the game the way he does, but like you said, you could tell as the season wore on, he was just kind of deteriorating little after taking all those hits. So that was obviously a factor in Georgia Southern kind of coming back down to earth midway through the season. And then you look at some of the other key injuries. Nardo Govan, a freak accident. He's returning a short squib kickoff against Georgia Tech, suffers a season-ending injury. That was huge. I think it was obvious to everybody watching that the running game suffered. And he was beginning to be a receiver, too, in the passing game. So that was big. And then in that last game against ULM, Logan Daves, one of those seniors on the offensive line, held out of that one. That was obviously something Georgia Southern was missing big too. And moving forward, you asked the question about Ellison. The other big question, can some of these big guys that are redshirted right now, these 300-pounders, step in and take the place of those seniors on the offensive line? And
of course, we do also have the recruiting coming up right now, and then into the recruiting day of February when National Signing Day comes about. And it sounds like Georgia Southern already has maybe a little bit of things to be happy about, especially on the offensive line. Looks like they got a commitment, and hopefully that will continue throughout. And the offensive line seems to be what the big question mark will be in the future, because it seems like we're getting a lot of guys back next year, offense and defensively.
Yeah, obviously losing Edwin Jackson to graduation is going to be big. He's the heart of the defense, the leading tackler on the team. But, man, there's some good linebackers there that are left. Antoine Williams, the guy who's coming back. Deshaunte Gowan, I think, was a breakout star on the defensive side of the ball. Georgia Southern kind of always does enough on defense. I think it's safe to say that they're going to be able to do that again next season.
All right, and led the league in defense in the Sun Belt this year. Pretty impressive when you have that offense. Sometimes you forget about how well the defense has played throughout the season. Well, let's get into basketball. Georgia Southern's men and women, not a lot of games between now and the new year, but this past weekend there was a doubleheader at Hanner Fieldhouse. Let's get out and take a look at some of the highlights. Another Eagle basketball doubleheader Saturday afternoon. The ladies hosting Toccoa Falls. The visitors struggling, to say the least, shooting less than 20% from the field for the game. The Eagles in control, especially on the glass, where they out-rebounded Toccoa Falls 64-38. Patrice Butler with the putback. Later on the break, Anna Claire Knight outraces the defense for the easy layup. Eagles by 27. Next, the nice look from Angel McGowan to Brianna Jones. The Eagles later on the run, and Abby Hicks finishes nicely. Only 3 players in double figures, one being Angel McGowan here, hitting from behind the arc. McGowan adding another three-pointer moments later, pulling up from the near side. And finally, great ball movement as 4 Eagle players touched the ball within seconds, finding a wide-open Hicks for 3, and the Eagles run away, winning 84-36. To the guys' game we go. Georgia Southern hosting South Carolina State, hoping to stay in the groove, looking for their 4th straight victory. Things look good early. Angel Matias starts the break to Jake Alsmiller to the big fella, Trent Wiedemann, the two-handed jam. Later, Matias backing his way in for 2 of his 10 points. One of 4 Eagles in double figures. The visitors clawing their way back. Jordavius Troutman for 3. GSU right back on the other end, though. Wiedemann driving for the hook shot off the glass. He'd finish with 18 points and 8 rebounds. Later, Curtis Diamond the steal, ahead to Jelani Hewitt for 2 of his game-high 23 points. Next, check out the crossover by Mike Hughes, who finished with 11 points in the game. Again, the visitors not going away thanks to 11 three-pointers. Edward Stevens here for 3. The Eagles right back. Wiedemann and Hewitt working the pick and roll nicely. And finally, it's Matias, the rare block shot, and off to the races dunk as the Eagles win 71-58.
With more than 100 years of experience under one roof, Complete Car Care on 207 Northside Drive can do it all for your car or truck, gas or diesel, even hybrids, motors, tune-ups, front end, air conditioning, transmissions, electrical. Complete Car Care does it all. When others say no, Complete Car Care says yes. Come see what Michael and his team can do for you at Complete Car Care, 207 Northside Drive.
Well, Matt, Central Florida, Georgia Southern takes them down to the wire. I think the basketball team, I'm going to be surprised if they don't finish in the top 4 or 5 in the league this year.
Absolutely. They're playing good basketball right now. The Central Florida game, I think the thing that stood out to me was that was a game they should have won. And when you're talking about we should have beat that American Athletic Conference team, you're in pretty good shape. And I would wager that if Eric Ferguson was on the field, they'd have wins over Central Florida and Illinois and be undefeated right now. I don't think it's unfair to say that. So obviously a piece missing, but what they're working with right now, pretty darn good.
Well, hopefully we'll hear some more and that thing will be resolved. We'd love to see Ferguson back on the floor because with the Sun Belt play coming up, he might be very vital to them making a run at the title, not only finishing in the top 4 or 5 in the league. Well, that'll wrap things up for now. For Matt Yogus, I'm Josh Aubrey. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again next week.